This is a follow-up to the Your First Game tutorial, where we created a player, an enemy, and learn to code our first game. In this part, we are going to do quite a bit of work related to level design. Create coins that we can collect, see how to design levels, and I just have to reach it, have a portal at the end of the level that takes us to the next level. This will allow you to start fleshing out your game. Let's get started with the coin. You can keep working from your project from the previous tutorial or download the finished Chapter 1 project, which looks like that. That will give you a clean slate to focus on the level design. Let's create our coin. Create a new scene by going to Scene, New Scene. And this one is going to be a custom node. We're going to make an interactive coin. When you think about something interactive that you can collide with, it has to be a body, or most of the time it will be an area 2D. This is what we'll go with. Something that can detect the player hitting it and that will disappear when it does so. Let's call our area coin. And we're going to go to the Assets folder, drag and drop the coin onto the scene. Now I'll select the coin sprite, expand the transform section, and click the arrow to reset the position so that it is centered on the origin. Our area needs a collision shape. Let's select the coin area, Control A, add a collision shape 2D. And this one is going to have a new circle shape 2D. This is the shape that best fits our coin. So click, it can be a bit hard because of the coin sprite. You can hide it if that's the case. To click and drag on the handle to expand the radius of our circle, to expand our circle. We are going to add another node to animate our coin. This one is called an animation player. So select the area 2D, press Ctrl A and look for animation player, the first one. This is a really powerful tool that you can use in Godot to animate whatever you want. You can animate literally any property that you will find on any node in your node tree. This can be things like, well, we will see. You can make something fade, you can make something bounce. This is what we're going to do now, right after we saved the scene. So press Ctrl S to save the scene in source. We're going to add a new folder. Let's create a folder called objects. Objects will be every object that we have in the level that is not an actor, an AI if you want. So I'll create that folder and save my coin.tscn in there. With the animation player selected, you will have an animation bottom docker that appears in the view. I'm going to expand it just a little bit, and we're going to create our coin's animation there. We're going to have one bouncing animation where the coin is going to do something like that. It's going to oscillate a little bit. It's going to bounce to give it a bit of life, and one where the coin will fade out like so. And with what I've been doing in the view, lowering the alpha channel of the modulate property and moving the coin, well, this is exactly what we're going to do from the animation player. Click the animation menu to create your first animation using the new option. The first one, we're going to call it bouncing. The coin will be bouncing, and this gives us a timeline. You can click and drag at the top to set the current time. I'm going to use the slider in the bottom right to zoom in a little bit on the time range. And we're going to add a track for our sprite's position, I think. We're going to only move the sprite a little bit and keep the area in place. Or you can try to move the entire area 2D. Let's try that and see if everything works fine in the game. Sometimes when you move the area with the collision shape, you have to make sure that the collisions, the physics engine, takes everything into account, but that should be fine. I'm going to use the box to the right of the timeline to set the animation length, the gray area on the timeline. Let's go with 1.8 seconds, should do the trick. And our bouncing animation will loop. For that, you want to click the loop icon to make this animation loop. So to start animating, select the area 2D, our coin, and we want to uncheck the rotation key at the top of the screen, the viewport in the toolbar, and only have the location active, so blue in this case. This is the key, the property that will be automatically keyed on the coin here, the selected node, when we press the insert key. So if I press insert or click the key icon in the toolbar, it's going to insert a track, a position track for the coin for my area 2D node. If you have a pop-up that asks you to confirm to create the track, you can just press OK. This new track that's appeared has one key that is going to tell the computer, tell Godot, to set the coin to be at this position that we see in the inspector when we select the keyframe. We're going to move forward in time, and with the coin still selected, press W to go into the move tool, click, shift and drag to move the coin up. Then you can press the insert key to insert a new keyframe on that position track. And if you drag your mouse cursor on the animation track, you will see that now the coin goes up and down. And if you select the second keyframe, the Y value is going to be different from that of the first keyframe. Now we're going to make the position of the coin below the origin on the first keyframe. So you have to move the coin with the time cursor on the first keyframe, and then you have to press insert to update the keyframe, to key or to commit that value. Then when you click and drag, you will see now the coin moves around the origin. You can press Shift D to play the animation from the start and preview it a little bit. The coin is moving quite a lot. It's moving a little too much. Note that you can press S to stop the animation. We are going to reduce the values. I'll select the first keyframe and in the inspector change the value to 10 pixels. And then the second keyframe, I'll set it to minus 10 pixels. Okay, this should be a little better. Now the animation is a bit robotic. The interpolation, the way the computer transitions from one key to the next, is linear at the moment. It means that the value is going to be the average weighted by the time difference between the two keyframes. We want to change that to spice up the animation. To do so, we can select a keyframe and use the easing property in the inspector. You can click and drag on that curve to change the transition between the values. So pull the curve to the left and press Shift D to see how the coin now moves. You can see it gets some kind of impulse now moving up, and it doesn't really get it moving back down. So we can select the second keyframe and click and drag the curve to the right so that the coin is going to bounce, it's going to go up and then slowly fall down and bounce back up as the animation restarts. It's a little slow maybe at the moment, so you can click and drag the middle keyframe to shorten the animation and set the animation duration to, let's say, 1.4. And now the coin bounces a bit faster. You could give it a really fast bounce, 1.2 seconds. I'll let you play a bit with that and see how fast you want the coin to move. But with that, we have our bouncing animation. We're going to add a second one. So go to the animation, new, and we are going to call this one fade out. In this case, we're not going to be using the default keyframes and the insert keyboard shortcut to key our animation. We're going to make our coin here disappear. So I'll select the coin. First, I'm going to reset the position on the coin, because when you play an animation, you are changing the actual values, the actual properties of the node. So you are really moving the coin here. And as you change animation, if you are not careful, these values will not reset. We are going to animate the modulate property of our coin here. Go down to the visibility category and click the key next to modulate to insert a keyframe. Then move forward in time. Say we're going to make it disappear in 0.6 seconds. Why not? And click the key to create a new keyframe. Godot creates some kind of color range here for us. And if you select the second keyframe, you can now edit the color. Click and drag on the alpha to make the coin disappear. And you can see the gradient update in real time, showing you how this color will animate. Now you have to click on the time range to update the preview of the animation in Godot 3.1. Press Shift D to preview your animation. And you can hide the collision shape 2D to see how it will look in game. And with that, we're going to make the animation 0.6 seconds long. And we are good to go. We can add maybe something that's a bit more advanced. Animations replace code, because you could write code in GDScript to animate the position of the node here. Now we're going to see what I was talking about. When you switch the animation back to bouncing and you click and drag, the coin stays invisible. Because again, when we use that fade out animation, we are actually changing that modulate value on our coin node. So when you go back to bouncing, that doesn't have a modulate track. Well, this color value does not reset. To reset it every time we start the animation, we can select our coin and in our bouncing animation, reset the modulate value here and create a keyframe at the start. That way, even if we go back to fade out, like so, and go back to bouncing, the color of our coin will reset. However, we do not want to reset the position of the coin when we fade it out, because we want it to smoothly disappear in the game view exactly where it is. If we were to reset the position here, the node would jump like so, right? It would jump maybe up to 10 pixels. One last thing that we're going to do is at the end of the fade out animation, we can actually call functions from our animations, because these animations are really setting properties of the node. It is similar to inside the script, say position equal vector2 and putting the values in parentheses, except that it's visual on the one hand, and on the other hand, it will really save you from bugs, and it can even save you some performances. Well, this is a bit more technical, but this animation system helps you replace code, avoid to type code. So we can go to the end of our fade out animation and click the Add Track button. You want to use the call method track that allows you, as you'd expect, to call a method. So you click on that, and then you select the node on which you want to call a method. At the end of the fade out, we want to destroy our coin. So we're going to select the area 2D, go to OK, and we can right click to insert a key at point. A window helps you to select the method that you want to call. It's going to give you a list of all the available methods on the node and all the classes that it extends. We are looking for Q3 on the node class. So you can click open to create a key that will call the Q3 method when we reach the end of the animation. This will run only in-game. This will not delete the node, obviously, in the scene we're working with, but we will use that so that when the player touches the coin, we just play the fade out animation and the coin deletes itself magically. That's what we're going to do next. Select the coin, click the Add Script button, and we want to create a new script called coin.gd. Empty template as usual, click Create to create that new script. I'm going to close the other tabs and expand the script editor. Now, we want to store a reference to the animation player. So we can use an onReady variable. Let's write it and I'll explain how it works. So onReady variable, animation player, colon, it's going to be of type animation player, and we're going to get the node animation player, like so. So here's what it's doing. onReady is syntactic sugar to run that code here before the ready function, but when Godot is going to call this function ready. Remember, it's an automated callback that is built into the game engine and specific to Godot. So this allows us to call a function like getNode that we would normally need to call in the ready function and to store the result in a variable. Meaning that when we do that here, we get that animation player node, our animation player variable becomes a reference to this animation player node in the scene tree. We're going to use that one when something collides with our coin here. Let's go back to the coin in the view. We're going to update the area to these collisions in the collision tab, and it's going to not be on any layer. Well, it could be on the coins layer here, and it's going to mask the player. It's going to detect collisions with the player. And then we're going to use the body entered signal that we're going to connect to this coin itself. So whenever a body enters the area, whenever the player hits the area, we are going to play that fade out animation. So click Connect, select the coin itself, and here I'm going to rename the method. We don't need the name of the node in there. OnBodyEntered is enough because we are connecting this node to itself. Click Connect to create the function in here, and we're going to use our animation player, animationPlayer.play, and you can see Godot autocompletes the animations. We want to play fade out. I want to do one last thing. It's making it so when we play the game, the coin will automatically play the bouncing animation. You have a button right next to the animations drop-down list that allows you to autoplay an animation upon loading that node. So you want to make it active for bouncing. And when you expand the list, especially if you have lots of animations, you will see that the animation that will play by default will be shown here. With that, let us test our coin. Go back to the level template, and we're going to search for our coin.tscn, place it in the game world, and we can select it, drag it around, and Control D to duplicate it. So I'm going to make 3 coins. Now we can test the game to see our coins in action. And that's the part I forgot. Yes, that is why we should not animate the area to the node straight. Remember, I told you that we are directly modifying the position of our node here. Well, when you place the node, the coin, somewhere in your level, you are changing its position. You can see the position is over 1000 on the x-axis here, for example. And our animation in the animation player is going to reset the position of the node. Let me right-click on a coin, set editable children to show you. I'll select its animation player, and look, as soon as I click on the timeline, the node jumps back to the origin, and it's animating and it's there. It's just at the top here, right next to the origin. So we have to go back to the coin scene to change that animation so that we don't animate the area, but that we animate the coin sprite. To do so, it's not that complicated. You can change your animation paths anytime. So you select the animation player, and you see where you have the position here. I'm going to click on the double arrow to expand the area. You can click where you have that position, and you actually have some kind of code for the path to the property that you are animating. I'm going to replace the dot with the name of the node that I want to get to. So dot would be the parent here, the root of the scene, I think, coin. But if you replace it with lowercase coin, it's going to animate this sprite instead. And you can see that the animation player created a second category that shows the icon of the node we are animating. So now you can see we're just animating the sprite without moving the collision shape 2D. And we're going to do the same on the fade out animation. It's not necessary. It's good. So we just have to change that track. Press F5 after having done so, and now you will see your coins bounce. And when you touch a coin, it's going to fade out. The fade out is a little too slow, so I'm going to go back to the animation player, fade out animation, and select, like click and drag to box select the two keys, shorten the animation to 0.4 seconds, let's say, and reduce the animation length. Press F5 to play it again, and now when I go over the coin, yes, they fade. This is enough to get started with the coin, let's say. We have our animated coin that we can collide with and make disappear. One last little note, if we play the game, let me show you that that animation call function track is working. So when you test the game, in the editor, in the scene tree, you have two tabs that appear, the local and the remote one. Local is your game, your scenes that you are creating in the editor, and remote is the actual scene tree in the running game. All the scenes that you create in your editor get converted to that big tree of nodes that are running in the game. You can see that we just have a root added to our level template scene here. But look at the coins. When I move the player and go over coins, at the end of the animation, the fade out animation, they disappear from that tree. They really get deleted, and that's what the Q3 function does. It makes the object delete itself, or asks Godot to make the object disappear at the end of the frame or whenever it's possible performance-wise. So you can see that the animation player is really doing something that is like code. It's just not written with text. But with that, we can move on to the next part, creating the portals that will allow us to teleport between levels. Okay, let's create the portal. We're going to make a portal that will make the screen fade to black and take us to the next level. Continuing from our project, let's create a new scene for our portal. And there again, we have some interactive element here. We are going to create an area 2D. Let's call it Portal 2D. And we are going to put a sprite in there, so you can look for the portal in the File System tab, drag and drop it onto the view. I'm going to go to its transform, select the portal sprite, go to transform and set the X position to 0 so that it is centered on the Y-axis. I'm going to make the sprite higher up than the origin here so that when we place the portal on the ground in the level, the portal is just at the right height above it. We're going to add a collision shape for it. Let's create a collision shape 2D. And our portal has a shape of a capsule. Luckily for us, there is a capsule shape 2D that we can create just for that. Press W, move it up to center the capsule on the portal, then Q to go back to the select mode, and click and drag on the handles to respectively change the general radius of the base circle of the capsule and change its length. You can click on the capsule shape to change its parameters as well from the inspector, so that you can change it much more slowly by pressing Ctrl and dragging onto the radius and the height values. I'm going to zoom back so that we can add our node to transition to make the screen go black. We're going to make it part of our portal. So select the portal node, and we're going to add a layer, a canvas layer, to make sure that our transition effect is above everything else in the game. Press Ctrl A and look for a canvas layer. Now this layer, we can call it transition layer, for example, whatever, and it's going to be layer, let's say 100. It has to be above everything in the game, so we're going to use a high number. Now we're going to use a UI node again there called color rectangle that we can use to fill the screen with a flat color, black in our case. So select the transition layer, Ctrl A, and look for color rectangle. Now I'm going to go to layout for rectangle so that it fills the entire screen and change the color in the inspector to black. Note that with UI nodes, if you place them as a child of Node 2D, you will see the color rectangle collapse. This is because this option, this layout option to use the full rectangle, is the full rectangle of the parent of the UI node. When you are under a simple node or a layer, it's like there is no parent, so it's going to use the entire game window or viewport. But when you have a parent Node 2D, our area 2D itself is represented by a point in space. That is why the color rectangle also becomes a point in space when we set it as a child of the portal. Anyway, we have our node here. We are going to set the color to be fully transparent by default at the start, and to animate it, guess what we're going to use? The animation player once again. Select the portal 2D, Ctrl A to add an animation player node. We're going to add two animations. The first one is going to be a start animation, a default state for the node. So this is one we're going to set to autoplay at the start of the game, and the point of this one is just to reset our color rectangle here. So we're going to select the color rectangle and press the key icon next to color so that we have a key for our start color. And we're also going to go under the visibility tab and ensure that at first the node is invisible. That way it's not going to draw at all in the game, which can optimize rendering performances, especially on low-end mobile devices. For the anecdote, if you make a node visible and it's fully transparent, the graphics card still has to process every pixel of it, so the big color rectangle area would fully render, even though you can't see anything on screen. So make sure that the key on visible here has a value of off in this case. And I'm going to set the animation to be 0 seconds long, so that it just plays, sets the values, and it's done. Now we're going to go to the animation menu and duplicate our animation. Then we're going to go to that menu again to rename our copy of the start animation and call this one Fade In. That fade in animation is going to set the node to be visible So we can select the visible key here and set the value to on. Then we're going to lengthen the animation, make it 0.8 seconds, for example, or let's say 1 second to have a whole number. I will zoom in a little bit using the slider at the bottom of the screen and go to the end of the timeline, select my first color keyframe here, right-click in the timeline and insert a key. Then I want to select the color at the end of the animation, click the field next to value, and make it fully opaque. You can see now we have a gradient that goes from fully transparent to pure black. And this is going to be our fade-in effect. We are going to change scene. We are going to change the level when we touch our Portal 2D. This will trigger the play of this fade-in animation, and when the animation is done, it's going to load the next level with another Portal 2D, for example, and it will automatically play the start animation of our Portal 2D, which will make the color rectangle invisible again. With that, we can save our Portal 2D scene in Source, Objects, next to our coin. Click Save. We are going to set the collisions as well on the Portal 2D. It's something quite important to set up every time you create an Area 2D node. So select Portal 2D, expand the collision category. It's not going to be on any layer, and it's not going to be monitorable. This makes it so we don't risk having, for example, the player jump because it hit another Area 2D. Because remember, the condition for it to stomp an enemy and have that jump is just to touch another area. By making the Portal 2D non-monitorable, nothing else will detect it, and we won't get any bugs like these. However, for the mask, we want to keep the player, and we want this area to be monitoring. That is to say, we want it to detect the other nodes in the game, so that when the player touches it, we will be able to move to the next level. Okay, so we're now going to code our Portal 2D so that when we touch it, or the player touches it, they can teleport to the next level. Select the Portal 2D node and click the Add Script icon. I'm going to create a portal2d.gd script next to the scene. We want to make it so our player can teleport to another scene. So we need some way to reference, to set that next scene for each portal. We're going to create an exported variable to do so called next scene, and the type is going to be packed scene. Packed scene is the type of the .tscn files that are our levels, our coins, whatever. Once you save and select the Portal 2D, you can see a next scene slot here, and you can drag and drop any tscn file on it, for example, a level, a new level to load. You will see the thumbnail for the level in your inspector. I'm going to clear that one and go back to the script editor to make it so, well, we must set the scene for that Portal 2D to work. Otherwise, we might crash the game or we might get an error. We have a feature to do the same thing we have when we create a node in Godot that needs some configuration. We get that warning sign here. It's called get configuration warning, and we just have to, in the GDScript file, create that method. So I'm going to go function get configuration warning. This starts with an underscore, and from that function we return a string if we want to display a warning. Let me show you how we are going to do that. So I'm going to return an error message, for example, the next scene property can't be empty. And we're going to return that only if there is not next scene, else we return an empty string. And if the string is empty, the warning sign will not show in the editor. So you can save, and when you go back to the editor, you get that warning sign. Right now it's not working properly though, because in order for this code to run in the editor, because right there we need that warning to display in the editor, we have to add a keyword at the top of the script called tool. Tool will make it all the code that you write here will run in the viewport in the editor. So you want to be careful with that as well, so that you don't write code that moves the node or things like these that animates it from that GDScript file. Otherwise, it will start moving in the editor. Anyway, so now with our get configuration warning, we should get a warning pop-up when we click the warning that gives us our message. The next scene property can't be empty until we add the next scene. So if I fill it, so I have to close and reopen the scene in this case, and you will see that now we have a next scene set, the warning disappeared. And if I reset the property, next time you load the scene or something like that, it will show again. Now this is a little bug with Godot 3.1. In Godot 3.2, yeah, you see as soon as I open the script or change the view, the warning updated. Now we are going to add the teleportation code. So we're going to create a function to teleport our character, and I will expand the view a little bit. So we're going to create a function called teleport. It doesn't return anything, it's only going to play the fade out animation on the animation player. So we have to get this animation player node to use it in our script. I'm going to add an onReady variable again at the top of the script, call it anim player. It's the same we did for the coin, really. It's going to be of type animation player, and I'm going to get the animation player node. Note that there is a shorthand for the getNode function in Godot. It's the $sign that you can use instead. And if you start typing the name of the node, as you will see, it auto-completes as well. So you can write either the getNode function or use the $sign. Now we can use our animPlayer variable that stores a reference to our animation player node from the scene to play the animation. When we teleport, we want to play our fade in animation, or we could call it fade to black or something like that. That would probably be a bit more precise. Then we want to wait for the animation to finish, and then we will ask Godot to change the scene, to change to the new level. To wait for the animation to finish, we can use a keyword called yield in GDScript. So yield is going to wait for some node to emit a signal, in our case, before it continues with the function. So let me write the end of the code and I'll explain what's happening in greater details. We're going to yield on the animation player. So the first parameter is going to be the node we wait for, and the second parameter is going to be a signal. Okay, and if you select the animation player and go to the node tab, you will see that it has an animation finished signal. We wait for the animation that's currently playing to finish, that's fade in, and after that we are going to ask Godot to change scene. For that we need to get the scene tree. The scene tree is an object that stores the entire tree of your game if you want. So you have to use a built-in function called getTree to get it. And this tree has a method called changeScene2. And as you can see, it takes a packed scene as an argument. So we can give it our next scene, and it will change the current scene playing in our game to that next scene. All right, the yield keyword, you can use it with a function or a node, and it will wait for that node or function to emit some kind of signal, to send back some kind of message, and it will pause the function on this line until, in this case, the animation player has finished the animation. Now we need to add a call to that teleport function because we're not using it anywhere just yet. And to do so, we're going to use a signal on our portal. So our portal is set to detect when the player collides with it. If we go to the Node tab, we can use the body entered signal and connect it to the portal itself. Once again, just like with the coin, because we're connecting the node to itself, I'm going to call the method in the node _onBodyEntered. Click connect, and I'm going to move that function up at the top of the script here, at the top of the functions list. And when a body touches the node, we know that it can only be the player because of the area to this configuration. Then we're going to call the teleport function. Save that, and what we're going to do here is create a new level so that we can test our portal. So I'm going back to my level template here. In the level template, I'm going to create a portal 2D, drag and drop it onto the scene. I'm going to make it next to the player for quick testing. And we get that warning because we have to add a next scene to that. Be careful that you can't point to this current scene, or you can't make two scenes point to one another. So level 1 goes straight to level 2 and back to level 1 with the setup that we have. It might make the game crash on load because each scene is going to load one another in an infinite loop. But if you are going to another level or another screen every time, it's not going to be a problem. Just don't cross-reference levels. Now I'm going to right-click on the level template and duplicate it. Okay, it's going to be level 02, for example. I'm going to double-click on level 02 to open it and remove some of the stuff that's in it so it doesn't look the same as our first template. Select the tile map. I'm going to Control-Shift, right-click and drag to remove lots of tiles and just change the look of the landscape a little bit. All right, so going back to my level template with the portal 2D selected, I'm going to drag my level 2 into the next scene slot. And with that, you can play the game and touch the portal, which will fade the screen to black and take you to the next level. Congratulations, you are getting really close to having a complete little game. Okay, so our level 01 scene is a copy of our level template. I'm going to rename the first node at the top to level 01, and we can get started, starting with the tile map. So the way I'll work on levels is I'll create some base layout that I will use to try to guide the player, and I will press Ctrl-Shift F11 to go into a kind of distraction-free mode to be able to focus on my tile map. I'll erase the first wall, Ctrl-Shift, right-click and drag, and then extend the floor of my level to be also able to extend the pan from the editor because it's locked to a certain distance compared to the end of the level for now. So I'm going to keep the level to have the floor extended far to the right so that the player can only move to the right. You have a wall on the left side after all. And we're going to place the portal for the end of the level either aligned with the start or a bit higher up if we want to have a challenge where the player has to jump up. So I'll give me some space to start working and then think about the mechanics available in the game. So I'm going to press F5 to play my level template. And what do we have? We have the ability to collect coins, to stomp the enemies, and we can use that to jump. We're going to increase the stomp impulse to be able to jump higher. and that's about it. We have platforms, yeah. So the kinds of things I want to do is teach the player to jump, teach the player to jump on enemies, so this should come naturally thanks to the shape of the enemies, and teach the player to, yeah, jump over obstacles in general. So I'm going to hide portal, coin, and enemies to start with, and I'm going to add some block here that the player will have to jump over. You can make it small, but this will teach the player to jump because otherwise you'll get stuck in there. This will also serve as a wall to block the enemy. So we are going to place the first enemy right after that, in between the first two places where you have to jump. We will also use coins to guide the player. So say I want to teach the player to use platforms to jump higher. So I'm going to make an area that's too high for the player to jump over. And you will have to jump on a platform that's a bit higher up. And I'm going to place coins afterwards to guide the player's arc of motion. Note that I'm making each of these blocks 4 tiles wide. This is for, let's say, visual balance. I'm trying to have some consistency in how large my platforms are, also so that the player recognizes that the platforms are the same size and they can know how to jump over them. We are going to make another challenge. What can we do? We could have a block here that's going to prevent the player from going over. We're going to have a path that forces the player to go down, and have maybe an enemy that's going to fall in the pit along with the player. Maybe that's a bit too early to do that. So you have one enemy here, you're going to have the coins, then you jump on this platform, the enemy goes down, it's going to fall down, and maybe I'm going to make the enemy come from farther to the right, so that basically you remember that the enemy is inactive until the player sees it, until it enters the view. So my idea is that we're going to make the enemy move to the left, fall, and follow the player to the right. So this will force the player to move forward fast, to keep moving. I'll have to test this out in a moment. And then we're going to have maybe another block here where you will have an enemy and you will have coins aligned in the air that you can only grab if you stomp the enemy. So maybe in the middle of this platform, to give you some kind of rhythm where you're going to fall down. I should really draw this. So you're going to fall down, an enemy is going to follow you, enter the pit, and start moving towards you. You have some kind of a trap here with another enemy that's going to follow from the right, and you will have a line of coins up above that enemy that you can jump, grab, and fall on the platform to the right. And that should be it for the start. Let's make it the first level for now. So now, once I have that base layout, I'm going to fall back to my enemy, coin, and portal nodes. I'm going to select the portal, press the W key to move it to the end of the level, like that. Maybe we could have it on a pedestal, like something like that. Or yeah, teach the player to jump up, maybe to go up to the portal at the end. I don't know. Let's see. Then I'm going to start with the enemies. So I'm just going to move the first enemy to the right. Also going to close the output window. And Control D to duplicate it. Have an enemy up there on the right. And Control D, duplicate it again, to have an enemy next to that last platform, let's say. And we can also, do we add one around the portal area? I think it's nice to have the last portal, the place where you have the portal, be relatively safe. one thing we can do maybe is have some kind of last challenge with the enemy here that's moving left and right. I don't really know. I have to think about it, but have some kind of pit and allow the player to either stomp and jump up to the portal, or to have to backtrack, jump on this platform and make a long jump to the portal. Let's see. The idea again is to exploit the game mechanics here to their fullest. So we're going to have coins here to guide the player's eye and to help them get the right arc of motion, jump at the right time from the right position. Coins really help you guide the player throughout the level. That's their main purpose, because really the scoring part is not that interesting to me. It's much more of a visual aid as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to select my 3 coins, Control D to duplicate them, so that I have the same kind of arc here that I can reuse later in the level. I'm going to Control D again, move the coins to the enemy, and I want to guide the player's eye ahead of time, tell them, okay, you have to fall in that pit. And they're going to see the enemy at the same time, so this will lead the player to not jump, but let them fall into the pit. Here, I'm going to have the line of coin, a vertical one, in the middle of the empty area. So you can consider it as an extra challenge. And I should note one thing at this point, it's that snapping is on. I'm always working with snapping. So you can see the blue magnet icon in the toolbar. You can press Shift S to toggle it on and off, and G to toggle the grid on and off. It's the default grid at the moment, which means that you are moving the nodes by 10 pixel increments. Now, depending on the grid you are using for the tile set in your game, you can increase that value to precisely align nodes easily. So say my tiles are probably 80 times 80 here. So I'm going to click the 3 dots next to the snap icon and click Configure Snap and set the grid step to half a tile, 40 times 40. This will help me to align my coins a little more easily. I think that smart snapping is getting in the way right there. So if you only want grid snapping to work, yeah, you have to check snap to grid. And then in smart snapping, you have to be careful about which are enabled here. So smart snapping allows you to snap to the other nodes around the coin, like the enemy's position, those kinds of things. And if you can see the node not just snapping to the grid, but snapping to lots of points, it's because it's trying to align with other nodes in the level. Smart snapping is really useful when you are creating user interface, when you are working on inside scenes, but for level design, sometimes it gets in the way. So I'm going to remove the snap to node anchor, side, center, and other nodes. Maybe the last option is enough here, but with that, now the coins are going to be much easier to align. We're going to snap to the grid steps very naturally. We can add maybe a last section at the end of the level where we're going to have an extra challenge, an extra enemy. So I'll select the enemy, Control D, duplicate it, place it in this area before the portal, and I'm going to update the tile map here for the coins for now, and expand that ground, add some area at the top where the portal is going to sit. Maybe I'm going to carve a bit more to put the portal to the right and have some kind of element that's going to block the player. I have to find the right size here. Maybe the area is a little too narrow. Let's try to have some stairs, just like we have in Mario. Okay, so you're going to have stairs here on both sides. Let's see if you can jump from here to there to the portal. I'm not sure, but let's try this. So we're going to have an enemy in the pit and have the portal at the end of that little challenge. I'm going to go back to the portal and my scene tree to move it to the right. I'm going to move my enemy a bit to the end of the pit. Note that having the origin at the bottom of the enemy as well here, and using a grid that aligns with your tile map, will make it so you can snap the enemies precisely to the ground. And that's one of the reasons why in the previous videos we used that trick. We had the origin at the bottom of the player and the enemy. Okay, that's a start. Now it's time to test the level. So we can press F6 because we have everything we need in the level to get started. Oh, I forgot one thing that's quite important. Remember that we set some limits on our camera in the level template on the player's camera. Well, we have to change them here. Unfold the player. If you can't unfold it, right click and check Editable Children in the drop down menu. Then select the camera 2D, go to the limit section, and we want to increase the right limit. We have to go to the end of the level here and drag a ruler, R to toggle the rulers on and off. So click and drag on the left ruler and drag it to the end of the level where the camera should stop. Well, we can stop it way before that, actually. I'm going to drag the ruler to right after the portal, 7280 pixels. Let's do that. So I'll select the camera again, set the right limit to 7280 pixels. And that way, now we can play the game with F6, play the current scene, and we can move forward. Okay, the enemy is a little too slow compared to the player, and the bump doesn't make the character jump high enough. So we have some adjustments to make, and that's often how it will be with levels. So I want to move the enemy forward here. There, the first enemy comes a little too quickly. So I'm going to select the player, move it back to the left, and select the tile map and move that first challenge here to the left. So one way we can do that, if you have a more complex tile map with more types of tiles and you want to copy something that involves a bit more work in your level design, you can do Control B to select some tiles. Then you press Control X to cut, and this will allow you to paste the setup or the set of tiles somewhere else, giving the player a little more space. Let's see now. Okay, first challenge, no problem. Second challenge, okay. We see the enemy a bit late. Stomp Impulse is still too low. And the last challenge doesn't work. We can't really jump to the portal, so I have to change that. Okay, so first we have to change the Stomp Impulse on the player. So let's open the player scene. And we're going to bump the Stomp Impulse to 1600, let's say. Close the player scene. I'm going to move the player forward in the view, maybe to that challenge here. I keep pressing F5. And yeah, now 1600 allows us to catch all the coins. This area does not work, so I want to fix it live here. So I'm going to make the game window smaller, right click at the top and make sure that it stays always on top. This will allow me to edit the tile map and to see the changes in real time in the game. To do so, for this to work, you have to be sure that the debug options, sync scene changes and script changes, well, the scene at least, is on. These should be on by default, but just in case you deactivated them for whatever reason, you'll want to make sure that they are on. I'll select the tile map again and create a new square of levels. Okay, so now we'll be able to reach the portal for sure. But the problem is the enemy at the bottom and the fact that I get stuck if I fall. So I want to carve maybe a path from behind the portal here. And I'm going to create platforms like these. Let's see, how can we do that? in a way that's interesting. Okay, let's try this. I'm going to make a little tunnel that you can take, jump to the portal. And for the enemy, we're going to move it a bit to the right. No, I think it's interesting to see the enemy here on the pit so that you have an incentive to jump to the portal, avoid the enemy, and then move in the corridor. Let's see how it goes. Well, we can very easily jump to the portal. I think this last challenge is not very interesting. I'm just going to make it so if you fall in the pit, you have the enemy, so you have a chance of being killed. Then you can jump back on the platform and jump to the portal. Because I think you can't jump 3 tiles. You can only jump 2. Okay, so I have to select another node to deactivate tile map editing mode, Q to select the enemy, and click and drag to move it into the pit. Now I'm going to take my player again in the scene. I have to move these coins as well, these 3 coins. Which ones? The ones at the end as well are not really aligned with the challenge, with the pit. Okay. I'm going to move the player back to the start and test the level one last time. To press F6 again to play the current scene. Okay, can jump up, avoid the enemy, use the enemy as a bumper here, and then I jump straight to the portal. And this takes me to this empty scene, that level 2, because that was the scene that we set on the portal in the previous part. So if you select the portal, the next scene variable, you want to drag and drop another level scene in there. We have level 2, and this is the scene that you will teleport to, the next level that will load when you touch the portal. And that is it for this tutorial. I want to thank you kindly for watching. Be creative, have fun. See you in the next one. Bye bye.